get, the more aware you are that,
you know what your shortcomings
you keep passing these barriers where you think, I should have gotten wise there. I clearly did not.
Dave Barry has been a funny guy for most of his life, and that humor has manifested itself in his column in the Miami Herald, in a great many books, in fact almost too many to count, and in at least one television series. It also won him a Pulitzer Prize. We met Dave Barry in Coral Gables, Florida.
Dave, I wanted to start with doing some bone picking, okay? Can we get the bone picking out of the way?
Pick a bone right now.
Okay.
That's the first thing we're going to do?
Yeah, I just want to get it out of the way, and then we can get on to the...
Okay.
So I was going back
I was young and drunk when that happened.
No, it was 1994. I don't think so.
Well, younger.
Okay.
Okay.
You were doing this interview with some magazine, a magazine called Reason, which I thought was very interesting, because they transcribed this interview. You can find it on the internet. And then where you answer a question, it says Barry in the answer. And then when they ask a question, it says Reason, which I thought was peculiar. But the guy at one point said, and I want to quote, the guy said, you write a lot about rock and roll. From a philosophical standpoint, what's the worst rock and roll song of all time?
I know where you're going.
To which you said, my nomination right off the top of my head is a song that was a hit in the 70s. Signs, signs, everywhere signs, blocking up the scenery, breaking my mind, do this, don't do that.
That was the five-man electrical band.
That's right.
Now you're going to tell me they're Canadian, aren't you?
Oh, better than that. But let me finish your answer.
All right.
Basically a diatribe against property rights, you said. It's a real smug, self-righteous punk kid saying nobody has the right to tell him what to do.
Were you like the lead singer for that?
How dare you put up a sign saying that I can't go on your property? Hey, kids, stick this sign up your ass. Five-man electrical band's from Ottawa. Ottawa. And I grew up with a bass player.
Did you really?
I did, Brian Rating. Anyway, and I hate the song too, but I thought, come on.
Yeah.
If you're going to pick on a Canadian artist,
was the other
Dan
one?
Hill.
Okay.
Sometimes when we touch, worst song of all time.
Another one I never liked. Now that we're picking bones with Canada.
All right.
American Woman, get away from me.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I hate that song.
All right.
American women. We can blame a lot of things on American women, but war, nah.
No,
we're
we
not
can't.
going to blame that on American women.
Okay. Well, as long as we're going over you picking apart Canada, here's something else you said when you were talking about healthcare. You said, fact. Canadians live 1.7 years longer than Americans. Fact. But because they live in Canada, it feels more like 12 years. Fact. And because they use the metric system, this is actually the equivalent of 15.3 American years.
See, I feared that because you have now got the internet in Canada, it sounds like to me.
Yeah, we just
when did
got
that
it.
happen? Now you're going to just quote every joke I ever made. It's like half of my materials making fun of Canada. I was in Canada on a book tour. This is some years. I've always enjoyed making fun of Canada.
Of course.
Because Canada's a good sport about it, unlike some countries we could name, and France, and which is Canadian also in its own way.
It is in its own way.
But anyway, I was in a Canadian in like Toronto, and this is back in the, I think, 80s, and I was on a book tour. And in a radio station, and used to be in radio, and they're doing the news and the weather, and they get to the weather, and I don't remember these exact numbers, but one of them guys says, and today the high will be 7 or 17 or something like that. And they go, yeah. And I stopped them and said, but what is that really? And they're starting to go, well, I think that's 38.
Yes,
and the other one's going, no, it's
Fahrenheit.
I said, look what you've done. You don't even know what the temperature is anymore. And that's always been my comparison between the United States and Canada is that you guys actually went ahead and converted to the metric system, which probably made sense. Probably saved you trillions of dollars. But you did it. And whereas in the United States, we shot at the sign. I remember driving around, you would see bullet holes in the metric sign. They took them all down.
Yeah. Well, when you cross
I'm not
the
saying
border,
I'm proud of this.
You cross the border. If you drive across the border in upstate New York into Canada, and I mean seriously, if you're a Canadian in the States and you've gotten used to driving at those old speeds,
they have to tell you.
You see 50 and you're going 50 miles an hour when in fact it's 50 kilometers an hour, which is like 30 miles an hour or something like that. So it is. But we've gradually gotten used to it.
So are you telling me now? You're my age. You tell me you actually think in metric now? No, you don't.
No. When we were coming here, we left Ottawa and it was minus 25 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
And
that's the bad kind.
That's the bad kind.
Yeah.
At minus 40, it's the same Celsius and Fahrenheit. That's where it gets to be the same. So you get an idea. But when we came here, I looked on the internet because we have the internet now in Canada, and it said it was 72, and I knew exactly what 72 was.
Now, is your internet metric also?
I don't
over
know.
there.
We
have this system where there's a whole lot of letters and numbers across the top. I don't know what it's about, but I would go for changing that to something.
Let me ask you about that. You I mentioned to you before we started here that I'd done this radio interview with you back in '88 when your Greatest Hits book had come out.
Great interview, by the way.
And thanks very much. I knew you'd remember it.
Yeah.
And you've written, like, I don't know, 75 books since then.
But all pretty much the same book. That's
but at what point, because I've noticed this now, not just about authors and movies and everything else, but you can't just write a book now and have it go out there and go around and flog it and get people to buy it. You have to do all this kind of ancillary internet stuff. You have to have extras and
you have to
and
tweet.
Crap. Yeah. Are you doing all that stuff?
Well, I think I do. Yeah. But they actually want you to Facebook things, and it's pretty strange. And I think we're reaching a point where you don't necessarily have to have the book as long as you're doing other stuff, the Facebook, the tweeting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure that, that say Joyce Carol Oates is really writing books anymore. I think she's just tweeting, and because nobody reads her books anyway. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Isn't she part of your band?
Yes, no, she's not. She's one of the few non-authors who's never played with the Remainders. No.
How many guys? This is the Rock Bottom Remainders we're talking
Rock Bottom
about.
Remainders, a band of authors.
Yeah.
Very poor band.
And the
Not we're better than the 5-man electrical band.
the personnel changes a lot.
It's pretty random. It's whoever shows up. If everybody shows up, there's quite a few of us. Like Stephen King and Amy Tan and Ridley Pearson, Mitch Albom, Scott Turow, Roy Blunt Jr., Greg Iles, lots and lots of people, if we all show up. But that's rare when we all show up. And it's actually not a good thing. We're one of those bands, the more people that you subtract, the better we sound. If we got down to like 0, that would be our perfect.
Does everybody play an instrument? I know Amy Tan doesn't, but what?
Well, no, Amy doesn't play an instrument. Most of us hold instruments, and I've described our method as the rumor method of music, which is to say, most of us are holding an instrument, doing something with it, and then a rumor goes around that there might have been a chord change. And everybody goes, whoa! It's like, and then you look and see what the other people with guitars. You look for somebody with an instrument similar to yours, and say, is my hand
where theirs is?
Now I know that's not the way all bands do it, but that's kind of how we do it.
But if you've ever seen Bob Dylan finish a song live in concert with the bands that back him up, you'll notice that they're all watching him because they have no idea when the song's going to end.
Chuck Berry's kind of the same way.
There you go.
Yeah.
But now you've had some major musicians actually sit in with you guys, have you not?
Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me he's Canadian, aren't you?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Right. Bruce Springsteen.
Because he's the boss and there are no bosses in Canada. We're socialists.
Yeah. He got up and sang with us once, and his career took off. Right. No, he was actually pretty big at that point also, but he did perform the song Gloria, which is a song I had to ask Bruce Springsteen. Gloria is probably the simplest rock song ever written. It's 3 chords that just keep going round and round. And if you throw a guitar on the ground, it will all by itself play Gloria. It's just not a complicated. And I had to say to Bruce Springsteen, he's up on stage over there, Bruce, do you know Gloria? And he goes, yeah, I think I can. And he did. He handled it well. So we had Bruce, the late Warren Zevon, who used to perform with us all the time. And a lot of people have over the years. Roger McGuinn of the Byrds. Still regularly plays with us.
Really?
And we don't know why. He's really good. I mean, Roger still sounds like the Byrds.
But what happens when you get somebody who's like a really good
player? Turn our volume way down.
So the rest of you are just kind of miming in the background.
Yeah, I mean, when Roger's up there, I'm going like, hey, we sound like the Byrds. And like, even though my pick is nowhere near the strings. The worst from that was Judy Collins. Who's not only a terrific singer, but she also is famous for having a really, she has perfect pitch. She's got a really good ear, and her songs are all, they're Judy Collins. So there's not a lot of rock and roll going on in these songs, so you kind of have to play them right. So we were playing, it was Both Sides Now, written by a Canadian woman.
That's right. There you go.
And I remember thinking, I didn't want to. Not only did I want to touch my guitar, I didn't want to breathe too hard on it in case it would vibrate just a little bit and Judy Collins would hear it and I would wreck Both Sides Now. But it's fun. It's really fun to get on the stage with these people. And why they do is still unclear to me, but they do.
Now that you mentioned Judy Collins, this put me in mind something else that I wanted to ask you a little later, but I'll ask you now because I interviewed her once and she was telling me about how she had to have somebody intercept songs and tapes and stuff that were being sent to her back in the days when there were tapes of people's music that they wanted to listen to because there was always the risk that you would be accused of plagiarizing or doing something. And I noticed on your website, under frequently asked questions, you have this whole thing because people want to send you stuff all the time.
It's kind of it's one of the more not bad, but just sort of frustrating things about being a writer, especially I think humor writer. A lot of people want to write humor and they want to send it to you, and there are a couple of problems. One is I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. You know, like I used to read it and send it back and say, this is funny, whatever. But then what? Do they want you to like get them an agent, and kind of thing. Actually, I'm kind of busy trying to manage my own career here, and that's not really how it works, And people would always say, well, I'm sure somebody helped you when you were. And they're not really, no. I did what everybody else did. I wrote it, sent it to editors, and if they liked it, they published it. But that's kind of how it works. You can't really get someone else to do that stuff for you. But
that doesn't stop them.
That doesn't stop. But then the problem becomes, what you were just saying, people will say, I read this column you wrote about television commercials, and I couldn't help but remember that I sent you an idea in, like 11 years ago about television commercials. And like that's the only person who ever thought of writing about television commercials. And I've had situations where they would just keep at it, and I'd write back politely, say, I don't remember that, but I'm sure that a lot of people have written about television commercials or airline food or whatever it is. It's going to happen, but people can be annoyed. So at some point, I just said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to read anybody's submissions because it's just too frustrating when they.
I want to ask you. Let me ask you about sex with dogs. Because you're a libertarian. Are you still a libertarian?
I am.
You haven't given up on it now?
No. Because like most people who are libertarians, what I want to do is have sex with animals.
There you go.
And I don't want a law. I don't want the man telling me I can't.
But you have said in your defense of libertarianism that that's what everybody thinks.
Well,
right? That's a logical extension.
What happens is like, if you the libertarian position, it's not that complicated. It's just that, generally you think people will do better for themselves than have someone else tell them what to do. And there are people who need help, and we should give them that help. But most of us don't, I think, do better if we're kind of left to our own devices. People who don't like libertarians, they always immediately go, so you want to have sex with dogs? You don't know the law against, and I'm thinking, I don't really know anybody. I know a lot of libertarians, but I don't really know any of them who'd want to. And what's always kind of funny about that is people who want to have sex with dogs do it anyway, even though there's a law against it. So it's really not relevant to the position, but we always sort of start there. And then, it takes a long time to get to, well, should the schools be provided by the federal, but we always have to start with sex with dogs.
Yeah. That's going to lead me to asking you about American politics right now, because I know you don't write the column anymore.
No.
You're doing lots of stuff, as you have pointed out. You're doing all kinds of things out of the public eye, just like Joe Biden does.
Oh, I'm having sex with dogs.
And having sex with dogs. But I'm curious about what you make of the Tea Party.
I agree with a lot of it. I mean, I find it kind of funny that the left in America is always big on grassroots this, grassroots that, and here along comes this actual kind of grassroots movement. But it's a movement that says, enough already with the spending, enough already with just stop it. You're spending too much money, and it becomes this like horrendously dangerous anti-democratic thing. I think there are some lunatics in the Tea Party movement. Let me just get that right out there. I think there are lunatics in every political movement. I think there are lunatics in the United States Congress. But I don't find it to be as horrible and threatening, because basically, if I get the fundamental, most important point that they're making is the government should stop taking quite as much money as it's taking, and more important, should stop spending as much money as it's spending. I think it's kind of getting more and more clear that it's unsustainable, at least in the United States. I don't know how you're doing in Canada, but we can't afford much longer. And it's pretty clear that in the next, 15, 20 years, the Social Security system, Medicaid, Medicare, they're just all sort of unsustainable, financially unsustainable, actuarially unsustainable. And we'll have to deal with that sooner or later. It's, I more think of it as like just, I have kids. I have a 30-year-old son and I have a 10-year-old daughter, 2 different marriages. But they're, I'm going to be fine. I'm worried, that they're not going to have anything left.
Yes.
because of how unbelievably irresponsible my generation has been. I think that's more or less what the Tea Party movement mostly is about, setting aside the lunatics.
One of the things that you've said, and I thought this is a really interesting quote because it's something that I've felt for a long time too, and I actually wrote the quote down. You said in an interview that you said it starts to really come home to you how inadequately prepared anybody is to be in charge of your life from a distance and to be given a lot of power when that person is basically your age and your background. And it's true. I find that terrifying.
Yeah, I do think there's a tendency of people have a tendency to become politically more conservative as they age. And there are probably a lot of reasons for that. But I think the main one is just that. The older you get, the more aware you are. That
you know what your shortcomings are.
You keep passing these barriers where you think, I should have gotten wise there. I clearly did not. I didn't suddenly acquire any great wisdom or reason. And because just you had enough experience with people screwing up and you yourself screwing up, you become more and more suspicious of anybody deciding for you, at least I do, what will work and what won't work, certainly on a mass level.
Does it astonish you sometimes, as it does me, that you look at some, let's talk about politicians now. You look at some people in political power who are same generation, but who have, the background isn't the same. It was like the things that affected you and I think probably most of the people of our generation, somehow didn't affect some of these people. It's like they came from another planet, and now they're running things. That scares me just as much.
What I find baffling is, I mean, I don't mean to keep going back to being a libertarian, but I can never imagine just getting up and declaring, everyone should listen to me because I know what we should do about everything. The economy? Sure. There's nobody who knows really knows anything about the economy. The economy is way too big and huge and complicated for anybody to begin to understand how it works. And for people who basically, because they went to Harvard and studied whatever you studied at Harvard, it certainly isn't the economy, to suddenly come out and say, I don't know where that, maybe it is, maybe it's another planet that gives them that confidence or just that arrogance. Yeah. But it doesn't work for me.
You've seen firsthand, though, through the kind of exposure you've had in your career over the years, how just by being a public figure and saying things, I mean, it's like Goebbels always said, you just keep repeating, even if it's not true, you just keep saying it often enough, people will come to believe it. It's like if you're out there in public saying something, if you say it with a certain amount of authority, people begin to think that you're the authority.
And people want to believe stuff. I mean, people really get excited about the idea that there's going to be somebody who's going to come along and know what to do and be right and tell them what to do and be right. Now, those people do come along occasionally, but it's more like every couple of centuries than every 4 years in American politics.
Everybody thought that about Obama.
That was what I was just going to get to. I like Barack Obama. He's a smart, funny, he's a likable guy. I'm glad we elected him president, kind of just have nothing else to say. Look, it's possible to elect an African-American president of the United States. And I think he means well. But I just thought it was astonishing, really kind of funny. I look around at all my friends in journalism, the hard-bitten, people in the world, cynical, just immediately buying into the idea that this guy really knew what we should do and he's really right. And I'm thinking, based on what? I mean, what ever made anybody think that? And of course, I think if there's one thing I think we have a consensus on in the United States now, a lot of people, maybe don't like. I think everybody still thinks he's basically a decent person. But the one thing we have consensus on is he really didn't know what to do the way he said he did. He wasn't as ready or prepared, and it was silly to expect him to. Yeah. Nobody could have been. Now, he fed the myth as much as anybody else, but that's what politicians are supposed to do. We're supposed to not believe them. Our job is to be very suspicious, and I hope we are a little more suspicious.
Well, but do you get concerned at all that because of that, if there is a backlash of any kind against him, what the result might end up being as we see Sarah Palin getting a presidential nomination? I mean, is that a possibility?
Okay, first of all, I just want to defend Sarah Palin a little bit. I don't think she is the... Yes. Okay. Well, no, okay. I guess I'll get this out of the way. I do not think Sarah Palin is qualified to be president of the United States. Right. I think she's probably an okay governor of Alaska. I don't think she's, I don't think she is deep enough to be the president of the United States. I don't think Barack Obama was when he was elected either, but I don't think Sarah Palin ever will be, to be honest. I think it would be a serious mistake if the Republicans nominate her. I don't think she'll win. However, the overreaction to her flaws to me has just been astonishing. I mean, based on often nothing, just this kind of just amorphous hatred, fear, whatever it is people have for this woman. I don't know exactly what she's doing that sets it off, but this whole Tucson shooting thing, that was a really good example. The people went insane. I mean, she had nothing to do with that. You know, it was wrong to suggest that she did. It was lunacy to suggest that she did, and yet that meme is now out there, and it'll never go away. That somehow Sarah Palin had something to do with this lunatic in Tucson, who I doubt had ever heard of Sarah Palin. Certainly wasn't influenced by Sarah Palin. So. Is that a nuanced enough answer? I don't think she should be president, but I don't think she's the devil either.
All right, then let's take it away from that and take it another direction.
And she's Canadian. A lot of people don't.
Well, there you go. And she sure can't host a TV show. I'll tell you. I tried watching that abomination.
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it.
Oh. I want to ask you about being a humor writer during the really ugly times, and
which would be like what?
Well, okay,
when wouldn't be?
Yeah, but I mean like the unexpectedly ugly times, like 9/11.
Okay, that's bad. That's bad.
Because that must have been. I saw what you wrote at the time, and you wrote a serious column. It was at the time. I remember at the time, as journalists, we were all doing pieces on, is this the end of irony?
Yes.
That sort of thing. Because we all honestly thought that you could never be funny again.
Yes.
Thankfully, it didn't last. But what do you do? How did you feel in that situation as a writer? Did it take you a while to?
Well, if you'll stop asking this question, I'll try to answer it. But go ahead.
No. Did it take you? What a smart ass you are. Did it take you a while to sort of marshal yourself?
Going and you make the point I was going to make, and so you've kind of made most of them at this point. No, go ahead.
Did you have to marshal yourself to write something? Did you even want to?
No, I remember vividly because I'd never seen anything like 9/11. I mean, I guess the closest for me would have been Kennedy assassination, and then the both Kennedy assassinations of Martin Luther King, where you kind of thought, gee, everything's gone crazy here. But it wasn't the same as 9/11. 9/11 was much more intense even than those, and much scarier, because for the days and really weeks after, I think a lot of us were thinking there's going to be something else, and it might be worse. And this was so traumatic. What will we do if something else happens? And I remember talking to other people in the comedy business, the writing, and I thought, when can we do anything? Are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do here? Are we supposed to join the army and be comedians for the army? And what do we do? And nobody knew. Nobody had a good answer for that. And I wrote my serious column, and I sat around thinking, now what do I do? What am I supposed to do with myself? I'm a worthless human being. I didn't run into the building to save somebody, and that's really all that matters now. That was kind of the way I was thinking. And then I think it was David Letterman, bless his heart, who sort of turned it around, who made a joke. Well, I mean, I don't remember. It's all kind of a blur to me.
I think it was about a week and a half.
He got up and he started doing humor, including references to the trauma. Not obviously making fun of the deaths, but referring to what had been going on, and people laughed. And I should have realized Americans have been through much worse times than 9/11. The Civil War was a lot worse than anything's ever happened in this country. World War II, my parents went through, pretty awful. Yeah. And they made jokes. They had Bob Hope or whatever over there in the war zone. So, and then I thought, well, we're really kind of being wusses about this. This was a horrible thing, but it doesn't mean that we have lost our national sense of humor, that we don't make fun of things. We always make fun of things. That's what we do. It's one of the things we do. And then, I don't know, it just seemed like pretty quickly after that, everybody got it. You don't mock, obviously, the victims, and you don't mock the terror that people went through that day. But you incorporate that mindset that comes from that into your humor, into your thinking. We make lots of jokes about terrorism and about the TSA, and that they've just become part of our national humor since 9/11.
It's a lexicon now.
Yeah, that you never would have thought of at the time.
Yeah. Okay, in our last couple of minutes, let me ask you about this. And again, this is going back to the phenomenon of the internet and how that changes things. Because with the internet, everything that you write, either for the internet or not for the internet, ends up on the internet. It all ends up there sooner or later, and there's always room for people to comment. This never used to be the case.
I know.
And a lot of those comments are hateful beyond description.
Yes.
Do you get a lot of that?
Yeah, well...
And is it disturbing to you?
Yes. I don't get it the way other people do it, because I'm not really particularly political. This is probably the most political interview I've done, I don't know, in a long time. Not that I mind. It's kind of, I've enjoyed it, but usually I figure there's many people who are making political jokes all the time, one side or another, and so I don't view that as my job. I try to make fun of everybody and look for humor sort of in the cracks and spaces. So I don't get it as bad, but I still get it. And what you say, I read a good term for it once called the tyranny of the twit, which is that basically any one asshole, are we allowed to say asshole?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Any one asshole with an internet connection can basically hijack any thread he wants and say anything he wants, and he can be, anonymously vicious. And even though we all are now sophisticated enough to recognize when that's happening, it's still very easy to get sucked into that. And in fact, a lot of us sort of approach it all now with a mindset that this is going to turn ugly. It's going to be ugly. It's not going to be a real discussion. I have a blog, and I just post stupid things, and people comment. And one of the things I like about it is it's become very self-policing. It's kind of like an oasis away from that, where if anybody starts that, the other commenters jump on that person.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't ban people or anything like that, and they'll stop it. And I like that, that they don't want it there, but it's rare to find places like that on the internet. Anything remotely political, and it's probably not as bad in Canada, but in the U.S.
Oh no, it's bad. It's the anonymity gives them complete free reign.
And I wrote a column about this, and it was meant to be a humor column, but I really kind of meant it. The first election that I remember in the United States that I was really aware of was Kennedy-Nixon in 1960,
right.
And I was 13 years old. And it was a really intense, emotional election. And my parents were Democrats. They were real lefty Democrats. But we lived in a fairly good suburb of New York City, and many of their friends were hardcore, always country club Republicans. So it was my parents were Kennedy, and the other people were Nixon, and they used to argue. I mean, argue. I remember, and they all smoked and drank. It was like Mad Men.
That's right.
And just brawls going on. But they loved each other, and they argued. They respected each other, and there was never any name calling. It was like always an argument about whatever issue. You're right. You're wrong. I don't agree with you. And boy, have we lost that in the United States. We cannot, I don't talk about politics very much with anybody except my wife or somebody I know that I can, say whatever I want to in front of them freely. And you, of course. Because I just don't want to.
It's like striking a match and lighting a fuse.
I don't want to get into I don't want to get into the anger that, which doesn't, help anything.
Yeah.
But.
We've run short of time, amazingly. This has been great.
I've learned a lot. And I just want to say, in whatever I may have said in the past, I do think Canada is just a swell place. It's a country, right?
It's a country.
Flag,
We have a flag and everything.
Good beer too. Also.
Thanks, Dave.
My pleasure.
All right.